Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking something that's incredibly sensitive, but absolutely crucial to talk about right now. We're looking at the current, on-the-ground reality of the Hikidashiya, which translates to the extraction business industry in Japan, and how it directly ties into what's known as the 80-50 problem. We're going to see how well-intentioned parents, acting out of pure desperation, can sometimes step right into a trap that makes things worse. It's a heavy topic for sure, but we really need to understand the current status of what's happening. So let's just get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this with a quote that really anchors everything we're going to talk about. If you love your child, look at yourself first. Love that can be entirely outsourced does not exist. Just let that sink in for a second. It completely shatters this illusion that you can just write a check to buy a quick fix for deep family trauma. The reality today is that so many parents find these extraction businesses online and they cling to them like a literal lifeline. But the idea that you can just hand off all that emotional heavy lifting to a third party? It's a really dangerous misconception. To really grasp the current status of this crisis, we need to understand two key terms. First, the 80-50 problem. This is a very real social situation where parents in their 80s find themselves indefinitely supporting their children in their 50s who have become Hikikomori, severe social recluse. You can imagine the heartbreak here, right? It creates this massive bottleneck of anxiety, guilt, and just total exhaustion. And that is exactly where the Hikidashiya, or extraction businesses, come in. These are private companies claiming they can just step in and forcefully extract these individuals from their homes to rehabilitate them. Basically, they're capitalizing directly on the desperation of these aging, emotionally drained parents.
Now here's a major reality check about how these businesses operate today. There are absolutely no national qualifications required to start one. None. Think about that for a second. Literally anyone could wake up tomorrow, call themselves a Hikikomori support business, and start taking clients. The barriers to entry basically don't exist. So when you mix this totally unregulated environment with vulnerable parents who are desperate to hear someone say, "Just leave it to us, we'll fix them," you've got a perfect storm. It's a highly lucrative setup for bad actors, mostly because the turnaround from signing a contract to getting paid is incredibly short. And this brilliantly illustrates the glaring structural flaw in the whole industry. On one hand, providing actual, genuine 24-hour care is incredibly expensive. You need constant staffing, right? So even if a company has high sales revenue, their actual profit margins are razor thin. So what actually happens in reality? Well, legitimate, caring businesses really struggle to stay afloat financially. Meanwhile, the malicious operators, they balance their books by charging desperate parents these eye-watering, exorbitant fees, all while completely cutting corners on the quality of care. They are literally prioritizing profit over the fragile psychological needs of the people they're supposed to be helping.
A lot of this industry actually thrives on the stubborn, old-school Showa-era misconception. Back in the day, people used to think a recluse was just being lazy and that parents needed to use strict, tough love, maybe harsh scolding or even violence, to force them to snap out of it. But looking at the actual reality today, we can see how dangerously distorted that mentality is. It's not a lack of willpower at all. It's a state of extreme psychological paralysis. We're talking about a state that often feels like hovering right on the boundary between life and death. And misunderstanding that, it just prolongs the isolation even further.
Because of that huge misunderstanding, time keeps passing, and eventually the parents just panic and call in a third party. But put yourself in the child's shoes for a minute. Imagine the sheer terror. You're already in this state of total psychological paralysis, right? And suddenly, total strangers barge into your only safe space and declare, "You're coming with us." Being hauled away to a facility that exact same day without dealing with any of the underlying emotional issues doesn't cure anything. In fact, it almost always inflicts fresh, deep psychological wounds. It's just piling brand new trauma right on top of the old.
So what can parents actually do to protect themselves in this current landscape? Well, there are some clear, actionable red flags to watch out for. First off, you've got to trust your gut. If a supposedly caring support worker is saying things like, "We'll stand by you," but the actual vibe in the room feels really intimidating or rushed, that's a massive red flag. Second, keep a close eye out for opaque fee structures. If a company is asking for hundreds of thousands of yen but refuses to give you a clear, written breakdown, or if they try to justify the cost by claiming they have some vague, exclusive know-how, just walk away. Honest, legitimate support will always give you a transparent contract. Now, this brings us to a pretty massive paradigm shift in our explainer. We've talked about the dangers of the industry, but we really need to pause and ask, what should parents truly face before they even consider outsourcing this problem to someone else? Because before looking outward for some miraculous overnight extraction, parents have to bravely look inward. And looking inward involves this concept of true self-blame. Now, I know that sounds incredibly harsh, but we need to redefine what that actually means here. We're not talking about wallowing in endless guilt or suffering, because endlessly punishing yourself doesn't fix anything. True self-blame means calmly and objectively looking at your family dynamic. It means asking, how have I been interacting with my child? What underlying messages have my attitudes been sending them all these years? It's about understanding, not punishment. Because if you don't actually address the root causes within the family itself, hiring an extraction team is just moving the person physically. It doesn't fundamentally change a thing.
And the timing of this self-reflection is absolutely everything. It's so crucial to act before violence erupts in the home or before everyone's emotional limits are completely breached. See, too often parents only reach out for help when they've been pushed to the absolute edge. But before that blind panic sets in, there's almost always a window to calmly assess the situation. Parents need to take a really hard look at their own underlying anxiety, their fears, and their guilt. Because once you understand what's hiding behind that panicked feeling of, I have to do something right this second, that is when you can actually start making high-quality, helpful decisions.
So, the crucial point is how the family members actually view each other. When isolation drags on for years, it is so easy to fall into the blame game. The child blames the parents blame the child, and suddenly they're enemies constantly searching for a villain. But here's the thing, finding someone to blame solves absolutely nothing. True healing only starts with a massive shift in perspective. It's about realizing that parents and children aren't enemies at all. They are both hurting. They are both just desperately trying to survive. They really need to become comrades, facing the exact same issue together as a team.
If forced extraction isn't the answer, then what is? Well, true support requires a very deliberate, compassionate approach. It means standing side by side with them. It means slowly watching over them as they learn to stand on their own 2 feet again. You don't rush them. You absolutely never compare them to other people, and you never force them into immediate decisions. Just providing an environment that's completely free of that intense pressure creates this profound sense of safety and relief. And that is in stark contrast to the fast, forceful, and frankly terrifying methods of those extraction businesses.
Ultimately, the absolute core message we need to take away from the current reality of all this is that becoming a Hikikomori is not proof of weakness. It's definitely not proof of a failure in parenting either. It is simply the result of a human mind that has taken on way too much, accumulated way too much stress over a long period of time, and has finally just reached its limit. Once parents truly internalize that, they can stop fighting their child and actually start fighting the problem alongside them. Building a relationship where 2 isolated people can finally look at each other is so much more powerful than any service you could ever buy.
Which leaves us with one final thought to ponder today. As we look at the reality of the 80-50 problem, and we see these extraction businesses just waiting in the wings to capitalize on it, we really have to ask ourselves, can true, lasting support actually be bought with a massive check and a forced intervention? Or does it really begin the exact moment 2 lonely people, a parent and a child, finally drop their defenses and just face each other? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.